Jay and Mike, how are you?
Hey, we're doing well, Andrew.
How
How
are
are you?
you?
I'm good. I'm good. I'm really good. I'm happy to have you here as part of the Ultimate Real Estate Investor channel on YouTube and other platforms. Happy to have you. We're going to talk about creative finance today, which you guys are the experts. I'm really excited to hear about what you've done in that space, what you continue to do, and where you're going with that. So, just want to give you an opportunity first to introduce yourselves to the audience and tell us a little about you together, individually, whatever you want to share with us.
Absolutely. I'm gonna let ladies go first.
Yeah, so Andrew, thank you for having us first and foremost. It was a pleasure meeting you actually in person in Denver. If you know, for your audience, we're actually located in Pennsylvania, so being able to connect with you out there was awesome.
Yes.
Um, so yeah, like Andrew mentioned, I'm Jay, and this is my husband Mike. We're newlyweds. But we specialize in creative financing. And I think a lot of people, that's been a buzzword, but a lot of people ask us, like, how did you get into this, this space, right? And it really comes down to our story. Our story was what drove us down this path because we were trying to fix problems that we, came across. So, we went the conventional route of buying our first rental property in Philadelphia. And we had saved up all of this money. And let me preface this with Mike didn't want to invest. I wanted to invest.
Let's get that
Um,
straight.
Yeah.
I was actually a commercial real estate paralegal before,
Nice.
going full time W-2. And I wanted a piece of the pie. I'm like, all these people started from somewhere, and I know I can do this, and I know all the benefits of investing in real estate. It's just a matter of like, let's build that capital and like start investing. Easier said than done, right?
Yes.
At
Right.
first, because you don't know what you don't know. And so he started to see like all the developers around, and we were working long hours because he was an accountant. And one day he was like, okay, something's got to give, right? We've got to do something different. I'm like, this is my chance, real estate, let's
It
go.
was right after tax season. I was like, nah, I'm done.
Yeah. Talk to me after April 15th.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
exactly.
Yeah.
But basically, yeah, and again, I'm Mike. But we've been investing in real estate since that April actually of 2020. That's when it all
Cool.
really started, and we started picking up speed and actually having an action plan. But after buying that first property in Philadelphia, conventionally, we still have it today. We have a Section 8 tenant in there. She's still our original tenant
Cool.
back
Nice.
then. But after that, we ran out of money. We were 23, 24 years old, didn't really have a ton of savings. We really basically just wiped ourselves out.
Yep.
So
Yep.
from there, we had to decide, okay, what do we do next? Do we really enjoy this? Right. A small single family rental is only making you a few $100, but we saw the vision, right? We were like, okay, if we continuously do this at obviously a faster pace, and we start to build up steam, this is something that is going to set us up for some major success in the future. But coming from backgrounds like myself and Jay, like, Jay was born in Puerto Rico.
Mhm.
And I came from very much a working class family in North Jersey, Italian background.
Cool.
And basically, like, when there wasn't a way to get something, both of our families figured out how to get it.
That's
Right.
awesome.
So being that, like, okay, if we can't buy another property with 20% down, how are we going to do this? Because we want to do it and we're going to do, but how do we do it?
And exactly like Mike said, you are your own resource. So that's what I did. That's what we both did. We started looking elsewhere, like, how can we make this work? There has to be another way that people are, you know, growing their portfolios at a faster rate than just saving and next, right?
Yes.
So we went into a virtual meetup because COVID, everything was shut down.
Yeah, right.
And
I was gonna point that out. April of 2020. Uh,
Mhm.
a little bit of uncertainty at that period in our lives.
Yeah. So we went to the meetup, and that's when really we were introduced to creative financing.
Cool.
So me, skeptical person that I am, I'm like, is this a scam or something? Like, what's going on here? Octopus feelers going, right?
Yeah.
So we ended up obviously hiring an attorney and asking questions and stuff like that. And lo and behold, this has been around for a very long time. And when I
Yes.
say creative financing, it's that big buzzword, subject to seller financing. So we went down that path.
Yep. And since then, we've now built a portfolio of a little over 3.5 million. We have 9 doors. We don't have a massive portfolio, but that is also not what we're looking for. We're looking for a relatively strong cash flow portfolio, maybe of 10 to 20 doors, that cash flow minimum of 500 net each. And that's actually where we're at right now.
That's awesome.
So that is what we strive and look for any properties that we do hold.
That's great. And I wanted to touch on a couple things there, and that's
Yep.
a great introduction. I wanted to touch on the fact for anybody that's listening that creative finance, while it is a buzzword these days, has been around for decades. And there are seasoned investors that have utilized these tools for a very long time. So don't get fooled that it's all new and people haven't navigated this world yet. They've been doing this for a long time.
Yep. It
Right?
just didn't have fancy words associated with it.
Right. Exactly. And then the second thing, I think the theme that we're going to hear throughout our conversation today is that you guys are problem solvers. Ever since the beginning, you got a taste of what this could be, and you put your heads together to say, how do we solve this problem if we're out of capital, but we want to build a real estate portfolio? How do we overcome those barriers and keep solving those problems, right?
Yep, exactly.
Cool.
So yeah, man, it really, for us, like, and another thing too, just to touch on that, when we were problem solving, we did obviously come across, right, and say, hey, we could probably get private money, we could do X, Y, and Z, but that was not something that we wanted to do or were looking to do.
Cool.
And
I hear a pup in the back. Hey.
And
who's that?
That is Roman.
This is
Roman.
Who all of our businesses are named after.
Actually. I love it.
So he is, when we started the businesses, bring up that story because it's actually pretty involved in why we do a lot of what we do.
Yeah.
We found Roman in Philadelphia, Roman in the street, right? And we did a play on words and called him Roman.
Cool.
Well, about a month or two later is when we started our real estate journey, and we were out driving for dollars, and basically Jay said, hey, we were looking for a name of the business, and we both said, well, what were we doing today? Right? Like we were trying to, and we said, well, like the way that I speak from North Jersey, I don't pronounce certain letters. So I said, oh, we were roaming for homes. And Jay was like, holy shit. That's great.
Yeah. I love it. That's great.
We don't have kids right now. And I said, we're roaming for home. Or he said, roam for homes. I'm like, it's stuck. Like, he is the biggest, one of the biggest whys we started from the beginning too.
Cool. So. Cool. Yeah, a good symbol of you kicking this journey off, and also the namesake for your businesses, which is awesome. Yeah. Well, cool. Yeah, I think about how you guys got started and solving that problem, and I can resonate with that because I had been studying how to invest in real estate for a couple of years. Right, listen to the podcasts and the books and everything, and I had a really a point in my life at that point. I'm like, how do I solve what's the problem I'm trying to solve? And it was capital. And so my solution to that was go ask people for money. And that's exactly what I did. And I've raised capital for all of my deals up until this point. So I got really good at that piece of the business, and selling is a loose word, but like just creating that vision for others and the opportunity, and investing in me and investing in projects. And you guys went about it your way, right? So I think that's the beauty of investing and how we are problem solvers each and every day, but we do it in different ways in order to meet our goals.
Exactly. Yep.
And that's a great point, because we've had that question asked to us, is like, why didn't you go the, raising private money way? And I'm going to be totally honest, like, we didn't feel comfortable taking other people's money.
Yep.
When we didn't have experience.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
That was a big thing that people were telling us to do. And we were like, but we don't even know what we're doing. So if we go and put ourselves and take somebody else's hard-earned money when we're just brand new off the street, what happens if something goes wrong, which we're not novice to the fact that, more likely than not, things are going to go
Yeah,
yeah.
We've been in this game long enough that
So
you never know. There's risk in everything.
exactly.
Right? Yeah.
Now at this point in our journey, we do couple private money with creative finance, so we have no money out of pocket on pretty much all of our deals.
That's
now
great.
up to this point.
That's great. You've got a track record now. You have a system. You have processes. Different story these days. That's great.
Yep.
So let's talk a little bit about creative financing as a niche or a space in real estate investment. Can you describe maybe the top like 3 to 5 vehicles that you use to finance your deals?
Absolutely. So the main ones that we use are wraparound mortgages, and it's up to you, Andrew. I can dive into each one. Do you want me to just list them out?
Just give us a little third grade version of what a wraparound mortgage is.
Cool. So out of the main 4 that we use is a wraparound mortgage, which is basically what in the industry is known as like a hybrid deal, which is a culmination of a subject to deal and a seller finance deal. So you take over somebody's payments on their behalf, and then they also hold a note for you for their equity, right?
Great.
That's one way. The second is subject to or mirror wrap, right? Their mirror wraps are a lot more common than just the plain old Jane subject twos for seller protection at this point.
Actually, educate me on that, because I don't know the term mirror wrap personally.
Yep. So a subject to deal is where you take over somebody's payments on their behalf. So someone who's selling the home to you, right? And you get ownership of the home. Well, with the subject to deal, there's not much paperwork put in place. In the case that the buyer defaults, the seller can take the house back, right? Where with a mirror wrap, it works just like a subject to, and it virtually is one, except there's a new mortgage placed around the existing debt that states that someone is supposed to be making those payments on the seller's behalf. So if they default, they actually have a contractual agreement stating that they are now defaulting on that contract, that they're taking over the payments, and they can go and take the house back. Right?
Got it. So that is a protection for the seller.
Correct.
Okay.
Yep. It's mainly in place for the seller. There's not really many benefits for the buyer.
Okay.
Now, in terms of another option is this old school seller finance, right? The old school seller financing is where you're just making payments to the seller and they're acting as the bank, right? And then lastly is novations. Novations, I would say, is a form of creative financing, but there's no like payments involved, and there's actually no ownership of the homes involved. It is a way for you to flip a home without actually ever closing on it, right? You're basically partnering with the seller, and then when you sell the home is when they get paid on their guaranteed price from you, and then you make the difference.
Yep. And the advantage to the buyer on a novation is that they don't have to come up with the entire amount for the cost of the property plus the repairs and upgrades, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Yep.
A lot of contractors like to do novations just because they have the crew. There is the risk of the seller not wanting to get paid or not wanting to sell the house. So there's that.
Right.
But contractors do like using that method a lot because if there is renovations that need to be done, they can do it relatively cheap.
And you protect the buyer, quote unquote buyer, with that by having contractual language that the home will be sold, right?
Exactly.
Okay. So they can't really back out on their decision to to allow that person to update the house and then sell it.
At that point, the contractor would just do like a lien on the
Yep.
house.
So you
Right.
do a mechanics lien against
Yep.
the home. Yep.
That makes sense.
Yep.
That makes sense.
Or cloud title with a memorandum or something like that.
Okay. And then lease option, right?
Yes.
That's another one.
Yes. So lease options is thank you. Yeah. So lease options is a big one that we use. Now it can be used on the buying side and it can be used on the selling side.
Okay.
For an investor, the buying side looks much different than the selling side. The buying side of a lease option, you have full control of the property. You can do what you please as if you had closed on it, except you are basically renting to own the home from the seller, right?
Right.
But most of the terms are in your favor on the buying side as from the investor. Now, me and Jay, we typically sell most of our homes on lease options to actual families who are going to live in the home.
Right.
Now, those type of lease options are a little bit different where they are just seen as a renter with the option to purchase it. And when you couple lease option sales with creative finance acquisitions such as wraparound mortgages, that is what we call burring without the bank.
Burring without the bank.
Yep.
Okay. I like that. So break that down for me a little bit. I'm familiar with burr. I've done one burr in my lifetime. Buy, rehab, rent, refinance, and repeat the process. Now Now couple that with what you just talked about. Where does it go from there?
Absolutely. So the overall idea of a burr is that you buy a property, you do what you got to do to it, and when you refinance, you get all of your money back from
Correct.
it. So your goal is to have no money left in the deal, or maybe even a surplus, right?
Yep.
And now you get a quote unquote free property.
Yep.
Well, when we buy a property with creative finance, we're typically buying the home for, a lot of times no money down to the seller. It's not all the time, but let's just say 5 to 10% of the purchase price we are putting out of pocket with closing costs.
Right.
Now, when we go and find a tenant buyer, they are not giving us just a security deposit like a normal renter. We are marking the price up based on its future value.
Correct.
And they're giving us a 5 to 10% down payment based on the future value.
Ooh, I like that.
So if we put, say, on $100,000 property, say we put $10,000 out of pocket with closing costs to buy it. We mark it up to a tenant buyer for $150,000 and they wind up giving us $10,000 to $15,000 down. We just got all of our money back, maybe plus some, and now we're cash flowing. So we quote unquote got a free property, which is the concept of a burr. So that's why we call it burring without ever having to go and refinance with a bank.
Yes, I like that. Okay. And then explain what happens when that lease term is up and the option is actually executed or not.
Absolutely. So it depends. What we do with our tenant buyers, sometimes rent to own does get a little bit of a bad name, or lease options, because the expectations with that family aren't properly set, or maybe the terms are a little too short. We put our tenant buyers through through credit repair and financial literacy and all that stuff to make sure that they're actually going to achieve that home ownership goal.
Yep.
That company that we use actually tells us as an estimate how long it'll probably take for them to be mortgage ready. Is it 24 months, 36, 12? And we base our lease option terms off of that estimate. Now, by the end of that term, if they don't buy us out or they can't, instead of kicking them out and having turnover, right? If they have been paying on time, they're great people, they treat the house well, then what we do is we now just put another lease option in place with an increased purchase price now, right? And then we adjust the rent accordingly too.
Nice.
And then we just add another term to it. As long as our term with the seller, right? Because remember, we may have a term with the seller that doesn't allow us to extend it again. We may have to ask them to leave. So that's why it's important to make sure that if you have a shorter term with your seller that you're making payments to or on their behalf, right? And you have a 7-year term, right? And then you have a 6-year term with your tenant buyers. If they don't buy you out at 6 years, then obviously they're going to have to leave now, right? Because you have to sell the house or refinance, whatever you got to do.
Got it.
So
Cool. Yeah, I'd have to like write. I'm such a visual person, like write out the sequence of all of that. But I know you coach on those topics in depth, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Well, thanks for breaking that down for me. What's the again? We talk about hot button like word of the day. I feel like the last couple of years, the word of the day has been subject to. What's your take on the current status of subject to transactions, especially with the due on sale clause, how to protect yourself from that? Are you seeing consistent subject to transactions? Has there been any change? What's your take on the current status of all that on the subject to side?
I think first and foremost with subject to, there's been an uptick of people thinking they know how to do it
Okay.
when in reality you don't know how to do it, which could only hurt you in the long run,
Right.
right?
or the seller.
Or the seller.
Yep.
There has also been a major uptick in subject to assignments, meaning that people are putting subject to deals under contract and then assigning them off. And they're treating it as a cash deal, right? Where they're assigning a cash deal or wholesaling a deal. No matter what, the seller gets their money and they move on. Well, a seller is always attached to a subject to deal
Right.
until it's sold or refinanced. So it's very important that you put the proper buyer in that seat who will have an ethical and moral business plan, right? And who will also have the seller's best interest in mind since it's their credit on the line. Well, in the past 6 months, you know, it's actually like a proven thing that in subject to deals, the default rate on those transactions in the past 6 months has increased by over 11%.
Whoa.
So there's a lot of new people coming into the market who are not only borrowing private money to buy these deals and then buying these subject to deals because they hear, oh, it's a creative deal, it's a good deal, right? Where in reality, the numbers probably don't work. Now they're underwater and they start defaulting not only with the private lender, but
Yep.
on the seller, right?
Ah.
And
Yes.
because of that, it is causing some issues in the space. Not in a negative light. Like if you are doing your deals properly and you're having the proper stuff in place, you're okay. But there has been a crackdown with title companies and things of that nature on how to buy them, if they're going to even handle buying, if you're going to do a subject to deal or like a wraparound. A lot of title companies are not allowing you to assign them anymore. You have to actually be the buyer.
Okay.
And that is because of issues that have happened in the space, because there has been such a influx of newer investors coming in. And what we preach, honestly, is that creative finance isn't for newbies. Creative finance, if you are a newbie, you need to get proper coaching, right? Because you are not only playing with a lot of moving parts and a lot of legal paperwork and a lot of extra things, but you're also playing with someone else's life,
Yeah.
right? Which is a seller. So that's why we always say, hey, I know that, if you want to do creative finance, awesome. But like if we ever assign a creative deal, our buyers actually have to be experienced. We will not sell a creative finance deal or assign one to somebody who has no experience because the risk factor goes up for that seller.
Yeah. Absolutely. And you're trying to. I think. Well, why don't you tell us what kind of sellers do you typically working with? I'm gonna go out on a limb that generally they're just in some sort of distress or the property is in distress. But why don't you tell us kind of what that avatar looks like for a good person that you are at the end of the day trying to help and give them a solution to their issue that they might be facing.
That's a very good question. And the answer is a slew of sellers. Yes, we work with people who have distressed houses, but we also work with people who have beautiful houses and just bought it a couple of years ago,
And
right?
don't have equity.
And don't have equity. And that's why the low rates are there.
I would say for all the homes that we've actually bought for ourselves, like we've done over 100 transactions, but for the properties that we've actually kept and we've bought creatively, I don't think there's only one seller that was distressed, and it's this house.
Interesting.
He was in pre-foreclosure. Every other seller just had a change of life event.
Okay.
And they financially were in a great spot. The house was in great shape, but they just couldn't sell it the traditional way.
Okay. What were the barriers to sell it the traditional way?
So most of them came down to they had bought it recently and didn't have enough of equity. And if they put it on the market, they'd be most likely breaking even or losing money, like bringing money to the table to sell their house.
Right.
We have two seller finance. Our last two deals are just old school seller financing. The lady owned it free and clear. It was a house that was handed down to her from her family. She didn't want to put it on the market because for two reasons. One, she didn't really want to spruce it up. And the second reason was she had sentimental value and she actually wanted to retain some sort of piece in the deal. It was actually her idea before we can even bring it up. And that's what we said. Well, if you want to be a part of it still, I'm obviously not going to partner with you, but this is how we can do it. And she's like, I like it. Right. And then the last one we did, we're actually closing probably in a week or so. That deal, the guy had bought it as a flip from a foreclosure sale, from a sheriff's sale. And it's basically turnkey. He was going to buy it, resell it on the market, but he didn't run his numbers right and he bought it a little too high. So he really wasn't going to make much of anything by placing it on the market. So he was like, all right, well, if we do seller financing, I collect a very small amount of interest. I may not get all my money back right now, but in the long run, I'll make way more than I would have.
Yeah.
And that's how that one came about.
Cool. That expands my view because I always think it's just a distressed seller. Like that's just my first default, right? Yeah, because if they're going to go sell it the traditional way, right off the top, they're going to have to pay 5 to 6% of that sales price in transaction fees. Broker fees or closing costs, whatever. And I'm sure that you providing that solution keeps a bunch of money in their pocket.
Yep.
I
would say a large majority of our sellers come from two places of why or reason on their selling point or why they want to do it with us. One, they've already moved and it's a house that's sitting by itself. So more likely than not, it's more of just a liability for them at this point.
Yeah, that's true.
Or two, they don't have equity because they just bought it. That has been our two biggest that we've seen when it comes to some sort of creative finance.
Yeah. And we're seeing that in the Denver market and every market kind of acts a little bit differently, but we are seeing that we had crazy appreciation. I think the whole country did in 21, 22. And then this past year, I would say that things are pretty flat. So, it's not like we're getting owners who bought last year. It's not like they got 5 to 10% appreciation. They might be at like 2%. And then once you factor in fees to sell it, they'll be having to bring money to the table.
Exactly.
So that's great. That's great perspective. So you don't have to give all your secrets away, but tease us on how you find these sellers. What's your marketing look like? And feel free to share as much as you want. I want people to follow up with you and hear your secrets, but give us a little flavor of how you go out and find the sellers who are willing to do these deals with you.
Believe it or not, social media.
Okay.
Specifically Facebook. That is our bread and butter with getting sellers, not us reaching out to them, but actually them coming to us and saying, hey, I want to sell my house and I want to know what you can do for me, what options I have out there.
Yep. And the easiest way to get somebody to reach out to you is just telling people what you're looking for.
Yeah.
So like we make the most basic posts, right? this house right here, I'm just going to give you guys like literally exactly what we posted. I put it on my personal page and it said, hey, everybody, me and Jay are looking to buy a home or to purchase a home for ourselves within the next, I think, 1 month or 4 weeks. We have closed over X amount of transactions and we are looking to purchase this one with some sort of seller financing. If you have anything, let me know. We actually had like 15 comments from wholesalers, from
Sure.
people. And then this lady who owned this home actually like DM'd me and she was in my message requests saying that she saw a post that I shared into a group. And it was that post and that she was in a situation that she needed to get out of, going through a divorce, blah, blah, blah. And that's
Yep.
how we bought our primary residence.
Wow. That's cool.
Yeah.
That's cool. Well, and I'm sure that just like anything, you just got to tell people what you're doing and what you do and what your expertise is in and the experience you have. And at the end of the day, you're trying to solve a problem. And any other tips and tricks on that marketing piece, on that marketing side?
Yeah, absolutely. We actually, a lot of our students and ourselves found a lot of our first deals on Facebook Marketplace.
Okay.
It's super overlooked. Um, Zillow for sale by owner, I think, is a bust. We don't really ever use that. It's very hard to convert anybody on there. But Facebook Marketplace is super overlooked for these things.
Okay.
We got our first creative deal that way. A lot of our students have in the past. And basically, what you're going to do is you're literally going to go on Facebook Marketplace. You're going to go to houses for sale and then sort by newest to oldest listing and then scroll as far down as you can. Target the people that have been on there the longest, not a realtor, not a wholesaler, actual homeowner seller.
Yep.
And then reach out to them and start asking them the questions, why they sell in house, does it need any repairs? What are they looking for? Things like that. And that's how we bought our first creative deal with like $7,000 out of pocket. We turned that into a rent to own and since have sold it. But that came from Marketplace.
Leads on tap.
Yep.
That's
So
cool.
Facebook, Facebook groups and Marketplace is the easiest way to start for free. And then right now, we're at that point where we're running a business and organic marketing is awesome, but it's not consistent enough unless you have a ton of manpower.
Yeah.
So we just do sponsored ads through social media,
Okay.
Instagram, Facebook, stuff like that.
Yeah.
That's
Nice.
where 100% of our leads come from today. I mean, we have our referrals and, we have our agents with pocket listings. That's where our last deal came from.
Cool.
Stuff like that.
Cool.
So,
Nice. Yeah. That's really great to hear. And I think I want to reiterate to the people listening too, that do some education first, whether it's talking to attorneys who know this stuff, start thinking about what your team is going to look like. You two are a team, but I want to ask you in a second, who's on your team? Like, who are your crucial players? Because this is not an individual sport. I'll say that time and time again. But do your research, know the options. And the beauty that I think you guys have is you don't have any preconceived notions. You might have a sense, but you don't have preconceived notion that this vehicle or this strategy is going to work for this type of deal. You go in, have the conversation, the honest, true conversation to build a rapport. And then out of your toolbox, you can apply wrap subject to, are we just going to do an assignment? Can a lease option work? Tell us about applying the tools that you have to the individual situation.
absolutely. I mean,
Yep.
so basically when we're talking with the seller, right, we have our process, we have, we run our script on them and then we hop on a negotiation call. There's many things that come into play, but what I always say, sales and negotiating, I love it. That's like my playground. I truly enjoy it. And it really comes down to just having a conversation. That's all it is. Like you can have a script, you have to, and you have to follow checkpoints.
Yeah.
But that's how I run my sales calls. It's checkpoint based. Everything else is filled in from an organic, natural conversation of understanding where the seller's needs are and what they are looking to achieve and
what problems you are solving for them.
Yes. And then based on that, those are the tools that we pull out, right? Like we've had sellers multiple times in the past where it would have been an awesome seller financing deal, but they're telling us wholeheartedly that, I'm 75 years old and I just want my cash so I can go do X, Y, and Z. And I can sit there and I can pitch them seller finance, but is that truly going to benefit anybody but myself?
Yeah.
And the answer is no. So that's where I pull out my cash offer hammer and I say, okay, well, John, I think that this would be the best, right? Where then I have this other seller that we bought our house and she wanted to stay part of the deal. So I said, all right, I'm going to pull out my seller finance hammer.
Yeah.
But I wouldn't have known any of that without having that raw, real conversation and asking questions.
Right. I love that. I love that.
Answered the question.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah. I just, and I want to say too, that people that might just be getting into this, there's the educational piece, and then there's the reps that you got to put in. Like you all have talked to hundreds and hundreds of sellers at this point. It's natural for you, Mike, your script. Jay, you can anticipate questions. You can anticipate situations. But someone just getting started, yeah, it's going to be a little rough to have those conversations. But don't be afraid to overcome that. And every conversation after that is going to be easier and easier and easier. And you're going to learn and learn and learn. I just never like to, with newer investors that I meet, I want people to stick with it and fumble and get back up, do it again and again and again. And 2-3 years down the road, you're going to really appreciate that you kept going. Right.
Yep. Sometimes it's really, go ahead.
I was going to say, I think one thing that we drive to people, even our students, is like, they ask us like, how did you get here? What's so special that you did to get to where you are today?
It has to be like a special seasoning you put on it, right?
Yeah. And my answer is focus on your craft.
Yeah.
And don't get shiny object syndrome.
That is the biggest thing. Yes. We did not specialize in flips. We still don't. I don't want to touch them. Neither did Jay, right? Mm-hmm. We've never bought a property cash and refinanced it or bird it. We've never done one, right? We have specifically focused on creative financing, sales, and negotiating. And that is how we've built our acquisitions business. And then we've stuck with our methods that we know and we're comfortable with. And now that we have perfected them, we are now just growing and growing from there. And now at this point that we've perfected it, we can now say 4 or 5 years later, okay, if we do get a good cash deal that comes across, we can go and branch and give that a try. But when you're first starting off, until you have perfected it, and I mean have done multiple transactions, you can hop on the phone call in full confidence by yourself. You can fully write out your process from A to Z, no problem, with confidence. Until you can do that, focus on that one thing and don't give up. Because at the end of the day, on my Instagram today, I put something out there where it was like, proud of everybody for being a business owner, because, through the weeks where we have no income, through the really tough times where you feel alone, through the headaches, through the you just have to stay committed and don't give up, don't quit. And
100%.
Sometimes 100%. It's going to feel like it's not working, but
it is not all sunshines and rainbow out there.
No. What are some of the hardest parts, that you've faced over the years? If you could sum it up into a couple of things, what are some of the hardest challenges you have to overcome on a fairly regular basis?
I think the very first one is our very first creative deal that we ended up buying. Obviously, it sounded great that we got to buy the house with what was it, $8,000, and then we got it back with a tenant buyer down payment. But she was in there for all of
it's like a couple months, and then she stopped paying, and that turned into our first eviction, our first resale, our first rehab, right? So it turned into a bunch of firsts, that property.
That was your first deal?
That was our first deal, our first rehab, our first
Oh,
our first rent to own tenant.
Mhm.
It's crazy. But in terms of like what are some not issues but hardships that we have on a normal basis through the business, because that's normal. I think the couple of the main things are, one is time management,
Mhm.
right? And two is hiring and knowing when to fire if you have to,
yeah.
because you can't grow by yourself, right?
And learning how to adapt in situations where you can't control. For example, the election that threw a wrench in everything.
That was actually the past 6 months have been the hardest 6 months since we have started.
Mm,
We have seen things that we've never seen before in terms of sellers' behavior, in terms of market behavior. We have had lulls like we haven't really had before, and then we've had random peaks.
Mm-hmm.
And so, like, the valley and the peaks have been much more prominent in the past 6 months. So, what has been the hardest part for us is to understand, okay, where do we need to pivot? Why do we need to pivot? Now that we understand it and we figured it out, the peaks and the valleys are now starting to slow down again.
yeah.
So I would say, being a business owner and in this business, it's understanding the changes, because what you did 6 years ago, it doesn't really work today anymore, right?
Yep.
It's always
Yep.
changing.
And we're seeing that in the short-term rental market. We're seeing that in the flip market, right? When interest rates go up, that throws everything off, you know. I rarely hear of bird deals happening because of that. Um, Less disposable income the last couple of years, like all of these factors absolutely weigh into the approach that we're taking.
Yep.
But fortunately, I think when you get to, let's say, I don't know, 3 to 5 years under your belt, you've built muscles to adapt, and it doesn't scare you as much when things aren't quite how you expect. Now there can just definitely be things like COVID that throw everything out of whack. But again, those things, those are times when people reevaluate everything, and that's okay, right? That those times come. Um,
Yep.
but I did want to touch on also the team aspect of all of this. How important is team to both of you? Not only just you two, but also the other people that you work with and have.
Yeah, so we are a team of what?
Including me and you, eight people.
Eight
Nice,
people.
awesome.
Obviously, the attorneys are number one and foremost, right? Those
Yeah,
are
like
like,
our internal team, like
Yeah,
Roman for homes is 8 people, but
Mhm.
like then the people outside of that, we probably have over 10
Yeah.
nice.
that are like our normal.
So definitely like external CPA, accountant, lawyer, like prime three you should have in your back pocket when you're doing things like this.
Yep.
What does our normal team look like?
Yeah,
Yeah.
our normal
What's your internal team makeup at this point?
internal team, we have VAs based out of the Philippines. That's really what we heavily rely on. SOPs is my jam and what I do with them to be able to burn and churn these deals. Our transaction coordinator is huge. She helps take off that load, make sure everything gets through the finish line, especially with creative smooth,
Nice.
right? Dispo, we have someone helping us with Dispo. She helps us find those qualified buyers, both for rent to own and if we do end up wholesaling.
Yep. And those VAs, they consist of 6 VAs. So we have a
Wow.
lead. So we have a lead specialist who handles all the leads. We have an executive assistant. We have a content creator / manager that does all of our social media content and YouTube editing and all that stuff. We have a website developer, right?
Copywriter.
A copywriter. And then we also just hired another lead specialist. She's in training.
Wow.
So that's what our entire internal team is, only VAs. Now,
Wow.
our transaction coordinator is a third party company
Okay.
that we hired out, but we have like a partnership with them.
Mm-hmm.
So they are stateside, but because they're a third party company, they're hired out, right?
Mm-hmm.
Yes. Right.
So anybody internal, we run all off of VAs. It was never like that. We actually always had everybody in the States and we only had like one VA. But what we found is two things. One, a lot of times when you're hiring somebody here in the States with our type of business, they take a lot from what they're learning from the job, and then they go out and recreate it and do it themselves, which is fair. That's the American dream,
Sure.
right? But
Sure. Right.
for the business owner, it hurts because it's turnover,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And then second is a lot of times here in the States where our natural nature is to be monetarily driven. So after a while, people start to get full. They don't want to work, and that's what we saw. So when we
Yep.
started to make the change to VAs, the labor cost is obviously much cheaper.
Mm-hmm.
And on the flip side, it's the quality of work and the quality of the product. They have way more pride in it, right? All of our girls, it just so happens that all of our VAs are women.
Sure.
I'm the only guy on the team, but um, it the work that they put out, they actually take pride in it, right?
Cool.
And that's what's been our biggest, I think, advancement is making that change for us.
I 100% think like if someone is in the trenches and they are thinking about hiring someone, definitely think about hiring a VA first, right? Because
That's
those
what
are
I
the
did.
monotonous tasks. Yeah.
I'm 2 months into my first VA, and she's in Argentina. She'll be listening to this and helping me with all that stuff. But game changer. I mean, and she's amazing and does anything I ask. I think my next iteration of that is going to be hopefully she'll stay, and I want to have her to focus on certain things, and then have other VAs focus on other things, right? Depending on what I need. So I am starting to think about growth already as well. But in lockstep with what my business needs. But I'm glad to hear that, and hopefully that's helpful for people that it doesn't have to be local. The VA market is still very strong and still very affordable for small businesses, and it's absolutely something people should look into. Do you use a third party company to source your virtual assistants, or is it something you found on your own?
That's a great question. And I say we source them
Okay.
because reason being is if you go to a third party company, they will upcharge you for the VAs.
You have to make money.
They have to make money.
Yep.
Fine.
Yep.
But the thing is that the person is then trained at a general process, not your process. Therefore, you're still going to have to train them.
Yeah.
And so, in that aspect, I was like, I just want clean slates. And I will train you on our process, how we look at things. And that has been much smoother for us.
And every VA that we have has stemmed from our first VA, which was a referral.
Mm-hmm.
So
Okay.
the lady, I forgot about Jenny. So that's another person. We have somebody else who runs our paid marketing. Jenny had given us a referral to our first VA. She's still with us. She's our now executive assistant. She used to run the leads.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
She then referred our second VA. And then she also referred us to a website developer who then referred us to our copywriter, who then referred us to our content manager, who then referred us to our new lead specialist. So it's like
Mm-hmm.
they're all connected within each other's community because they all live close together, right? All of our VAs are from the Philippines.
Yep.
Yeah. Do they work the same hours that you do during the day? Are they basically overnight workers?
Yes.
Yeah. I've heard that. That's pretty common for the Philippine market.
Yep. So that is one thing that we obviously ask them always up front. Well, Jay does all the hiring and firing, so I don't really do any of that. So I can't take any.
Jay has that conversation.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's one of our like non-negotiables. We want you to work the hours that we are available.
Yeah. But yes, a good VA takes a lot of pride in their work, and they're happy to be part of the team. And are they all full time with you as well, or are they part time?
The new one is part-time for like
Okay.
training purposes, but yes, the other ones are full-time.
Awesome. Yeah, it's a power of team. It's leverage, right? It's leveraging resources to increase the trajectory of your business, and it's absolutely essential. Um, let's talk about the coaching that you all do. What give us sort of a little insight into what you coach and how you go about that, and we'll plug your coaching program. But I think if somebody wants to get into this space, paying for that knowledge to accelerate your learning is absolutely necessary. We do it all the time, right? And it's so cool that you guys offer this. What can people know about that?
Yeah, absolutely. So our coaching program, we really geared it towards, because if you don't have leads, you don't have a business, right? If you don't have people saying, "Hey, I want to sell my house," or finding them. So we help people. It's like uh, a business in a box,
Okay,
where we help people start an acquisitions business with a specialty in creative financing, because
nice.
obviously that's what we do.
Yep. And the name of the business, it's called Romans Creative Academy. So if we're we're going to give Andrew a link to put in the show notes, but basically, like Jay said, we create a business in a box for you. So we basically start you out from ground zero with all of your foundational stuff. And our goal is to help you build that acquisitions business with hiring people from A to Z. One thing that we do very different from most of the other people in the space, that may coach it or that don't coach it, but a lot of creative finance players in the space teach it at more of a group level, right? Module course with support. Because me and Jay don't really learn that well, we know that there's a ton of other people out there that don't learn well in a group setting, right? They need more one-on-one experience. So we coach at a one-on-one basis. So we don't take on a ton of people at once. We have a small group of people that we work with at a time, and everybody gets their own designated time slot to be able to work with Jay and myself.
Nice.
Um,
Nice. So is it kind of set up like a cohort that you start all at the same time and go through the program? Is that how it works?
It's actually rolling in mission. So if a spot becomes
Okay.
available, the next person on the wait list will be
yep.
taking up the spot.
Yep.
Nice.
And
Okay.
then like we said there with our coaching program, our goal is by the end of the time that you're with us is to have a full business set up where you are generating leads, you are closing deals, you potentially have all the systems and processes in place, right? And on top of that, if you want to take it that far, have somebody hired underneath you to help take off the monotonous tasks so you could focus on the actual money making activities. So
Cool. Nice. I love it. And can people do it virtually? Like if they're in another state, can you walk them through some like state specific things as well? Or at least how to find out about that stuff?
Yes, absolutely. We have students all over the United States currently.
yep, and we do everything through Zoom. So no matter if you're our next door neighbor or you're in California, where we have a couple students right now in Cali, um, you know, we can help you out. And the TC company that we use has a specific model for all of our students, and they do transactions in all 50 states.
Oh,
A
cool.
lot of times, the legal stuff, which is mainly what's state by state specific, they always can help us with and or refer us and our students to an attorney or title company in that state that can help.
Nice. Well, I hope that some people make you part of their team. Like it's awesome that you offer that, and I think you guys are a wealth of knowledge. I kind of want to end on this. What do you think? What kind of mindset do people need to bring into embarking on something like learning about creative finance and then actually taking action to build this type of business for themselves? What do you think that mindset is?
To be 100% transparent, I think the mindset has to be that you are confident enough in your own self and your abilities, right? Because in those moments of self-doubt where you're working and you're doing something that is a little bit outside the box, outside the norm, and it may take more traction than the guy next door who's just offering cash to somebody, right? You are going to be looking at yourself in the mirror saying, man, this isn't working. Like, I'm not getting traction. It's me. The process is broke. It doesn't work. Maybe I'm just going to go try what the other person has success with. And I know we talked about this earlier in the meeting, but I think it really comes down to just having that confidence in yourself and not looking elsewhere. Having the mindset of, if this is what you want, being 100% committed and having 2 feet in with no plan B.
Yes. Nice. No plan B.
Yeah.
Jay?
And I'm going to give the other side of it. So if you are a skeptic like me, or someone who just likes to take information and then you feel or you believe it's not going to work, then it's not going to work, right? Because you are bringing that energy to yourself. This is legal. Check the HUD, line 203. It
Nice.
says subject to on it. It is legal, coming from me, who is the skeptic.
I love that. Yeah, absolutely. And it shows that a lot of personalities can embark on this journey, and but being true to yourself and not quitting and staying focused for a long period of time, you can do it. And I think that's a message for any type of investing. I mean, we're all playing the long game. Now there are quick wins, here and there, but the long game should always be the goal.
Yep.
Right.
Exactly.
Well, cool. Well, thanks for joining me today. Where can we learn more about you and your coaching program? Let's plug next week. It's February 20th today, and we'll post this so people can know about your 27th event and look for more events in the future for sure.
Absolutely. Yeah. If you guys would like to find us or learn more about our coaching program, you can go to romanscreativeacademy.com. Actually, and then on top of that, my Instagram is Roman with Mike, ROMAN with Mike.
And I'm Roman with Jay, of course.
Yes.
But for a lot of people who are curious about the creative space, how it works, have more questions, we're actually hosting a free webinar on the 27th, and it is based around deal or no deal. So we're going to be giving you guys some real scenarios that have happened and why it was a deal or why it wasn't a deal that we have done. So,
yep. And we'll be holding that at 7 p.m. EST.
Awesome.
We will also have the link for that in the show notes. It's a little too long to recite.
Okay.
And just a little tidbit, if you come and you stay to the end of the webinar, we will be giving a 30-minute free consult with me and Mike. So for anyone out there who's interested,
you have a chance to win.
Yep.
Awesome. Well, I'm planning to be there, so I hope other people are too. And yes, and check out your YouTube. What's the YouTube channel as well?
The YouTube channel is Roman's Creative Academy.
Right. Your social media is awesome, and very creative. Thanks to you, the content makers, and your background team, of course. And yeah, so thank you so much. We'll post all the links and all the contact information, and we'll see you guys soon.
Thank you for having us, Andrew.
Thank you, Andrew.
Awesome.